Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Soundtrack of Your Life. This is the show where we intersperse music in the form of songs, bands, albums, soundtracks to the stories in your life involving people, events, moments, times, scenarios, because we've all got stories where the two interlink together, and this is the show where you get to share your stories about that kind of thing. So my guest on this week's show is the really energetic and really fun-based Kim Kasparian. And Kim is an entrepreneur in my sort of coaching network who helps coaches and entrepreneurs with their networking and connection possibilities. Kim and I reached out to each other on the subject of learning to play guitar because she's shared on social media that she was getting to grips with picking up the guitar and learning chords and that kind of thing. So we just had a quick chat about that, and I extended an invite to her to come on the show. And then she gave me all sorts of songs and connections and stories in the sort of prep work we did for the show. And what made for a brilliant and wide-ranging conversation that you're about to enjoy, where we covered all manner of things, you know, the history of vinyl, where music's heading, the onset of MTV, loads of things that you're going to get to enjoy in the following conversation. Do reach out to Kim on her channels and social media, links for which you'll find in and around wherever you're watching or listening to this. And if you want to be a guest on the show, also the details are given in the description or wherever you're watching this kind of thing. So feel free to reach out and we can get your slot on the show booked in as well. So for now, enjoy the conversation with Kim and feel supersonic. Hello, I hope you're doing well. Welcome to Soundtrack of Your Life. If you're new to the show, welcome on board. This is the place where you get to share stories, moments, scenarios in your life about music, whether that's your favourite song, favourite album, soundtrack, theme tune, whatever it is. Because when it comes to music, we've all got stories in our life that interconnects all those things together. And this is essentially the show where you get to take the mic and just share with us, because we all love stories, so here's the place to share them. So my guest on this week's show is Kim Kasparian. And Kim is someone who's, again, in my coaching / entrepreneur network. There's a lot of great stuff in terms of helping people with their businesses and moving forward. But in terms of getting Kim on the show, I noticed a post from her, I think about last week or so, where she just talked about playing the guitar and learning, you know, chords and progressions and all this kind of thing. And look, when anyone talks about picking an instrument up, especially guitar, you know, I'm gonna, reach out to them and ask. And look, one thing led to another. I asked Kim, look, I've got this podcast, and we share stories. And in the lead up to the show, she's shared so much info and songs about times in her life, people, and it's going to make for another great conversation. So, Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Very excited, and I love the organic way how we became connected. Right? Who thought a post about, okay, I'm starting over, I'm learning the guitar again, would lead to such a wonderful conversation and invitation.
Absolutely. And look, this is, I've had this with many a guest on the show. It's, try to make this about a conversation. It's about wherever you'd like it to go, right? People that have seen the show before will know that it's not just I ask a question, you answer, etc. All manner of things can happen on the show. So, Kim, I know you put a lot of thought into the prep and stuff like that, and you've got various people that you mentioned, that have linked to songs and bands, etc. in the past. So feel free to begin where you'd like.
All right. So since we're introducing ourselves to each other's community, guys, I'm Kim Kasparian. In business circles, I'm known as the Success Genie because I help people grow their businesses, right, to 7 figures and beyond by living the life they want to live now. So that, and I'm all about relationships, and I always say relationships are riches. And what I loved about our connection is it started not with a, hey, I do this or I do that, you want to buy from me. It was like, oh my God, you're playing guitar, tell me about that. And I was like, okay. And he said, why did we do jam together? I'm like, it might be a little while before I can do that, but yes. And then we just started a conversation in the DMs about the music, and it went from there. And then, like, I'm here. So this organic experience is exactly what I'm all about, what I teach people how to create in their lives over and over again. What I love, and it almost, like, when he asked me to make a playlist, I was like, okay, now I'm in trouble. Like, I don't know how to do that. I'm from, if anybody remembers, if you guys are from the States, Everyone Loves Raymond, which was a hit series. It might be in other parts of the world too. When the two, Raymond and his brother, wanted to surprise the dad, and they got rid of all of his vinyl albums to get him a digital remastering of all of his music. And they were so excited. And his father's like, what did you do with my albums? Right? Like, I need to hear that. And I was like, and it made me hysterical because my husband thinks I'm crazy. I still miss my 8-track tapes. And I still have my vinyls, even though I don't have a turntable because who uses them anymore?
No, they're making a big comeback, vinyl.
They are. As I told my husband, I'm like,
yeah.
And he spends all my money. He's like, oh my God, you're crazy. But okay, I digress. But music, why I say that is because, like the dad on Everyone Loves Raymond, it was music, it was memories, and that connection for him, the album. And like if you see the movie Grease, the Albumins, like the Albumins, music was such a big part of my upbringing, all kinds of music. And my vinyls were like currency. Like we used to save our money to go to the record store. Like now how everyone downloads on Spotify. We listened to albums. If you liked a group, we listened to the whole album. There was singles, but the money and the joy was buying the album. So this whole experience, because I'm very eclectic. I like you notice by and I even include half of it. But I mark time through music.
Yes.
Right? I keep all the memories and the people who are no longer here with me, both who are living and passed on, through the music. And I think everyone can relate to, like, you're in the car, it's 30 years later, you hear a song and you're transported all the way back to that memory, whether it was good or bad or bittersweet. And even in my coaching business, if I find people are kind of stuck or not really stepping, I will prescribe songs. I'm like, okay, we need a little deeper dive, and I will prescribe songs and I'll get them to listen to it. And they're like, oh my God, Kim, like it was life-changing. And it's like, so music has power, right? It just connection, healing. It was a wonderful, I got overwhelmed because I'm like, how do I make a playlist in this day and age? But it was a wonderful, once I got over the overwhelm and I said, okay, you can do this, Kim. It was a wonderful exercise. So thank you.
Oh, not at all. I mean, look, you've just literally described the ethos of the show, the enjoyment that everybody has for music, right? And we probably make a lot of these connections so subconsciously, but when they happen, it's like, we remember everything about the person, the time, the snow. It's vivid detail.
Yes.
Like, it's literally as if you've got like the DeLorean or Bill and Ted's phone booth or whatever. You're transported literally back to, you're right there. Everything's going on. Every sense is awake. And as you said, when you start on one, like when you make your playlist, you do go down the rabbit hole because one memory sparks off another one, and you enjoy this song and then that song. And then technology has the way of queuing in on that. We're like, okay, if you like this one, then you might like this one. So it's like within that list is like, oh yeah, I forgot that one, but that's also good.
Well,
and you click. Yeah,
that's true, because I got introduced. The one thing I can do is I can do Pandora. Right? I can use Spotify's a little too complicated for me. Don't ask me why, but I can do Pandora. And like there's certain genres of music or like artists that I do like, and you can have your own, like you can call the like one of my favorite is the John Denver station or the Pink station, and they will pull in. And I'm like, oh, I forgot that. Well, that's like a good one, or like it'll introduce me to other artists. I'm like, oh my God, I remember. Like, so yeah, I love it. But and I can remember it was a different time when we were growing up. We just had the turntable, and then the latest rage was 8-tracks and then cassettes. Ooh, we grew up with, like, you would do what we call now a playlist. We had to do by hand.
Yeah.
And those things were like, people would sell, like, okay, I got a mixtape for you. Like, here, it's $20. Right. And it's like, I don't know how to do it. Like, I'll do it for you. Like, and you'd give them the playlist of what you want and they'd go do it. But cassettes were currency. Cassettes were currency back when I was growing up.
Yeah, in those two stories or mini scenarios you gave, you touched upon the real community and almost like occasion aspect to music. Like, as you said, you got an album and you listened to the
And
album.
everyone came over to listen with you.
Yes,
Yes.
like with your family, your friends.
Yeah,
Do you know what? I
friends.
had this exact conversation with my friend the other day, saying, you know, we are a little bit old school in our taste. Like, we like the '90s stuff. He's a bit more eclectic, but I you know, probably more. I know what I like, and that's it. But he was saying, like, what seems to be missing nowadays from music is, as you said, because we've got the connectivity in seconds on these things. You hear a song or a bit of a song, and that will do. But these were occasions. Like, this is okay, your favorite band, whomever, has released this new record that you may have heard a single from. But if you want to hear the album, you've got to go physically save money, go to a record store, buy a copy, get
Yes.
home, put it on, and you just listened. There's none of this
Yes.
like
Hours.
yeah, right. And it wasn't like skip this track or forward. No, you listened to the whole thing and you talked about it. And he goes, that's what's missing, that whole community aspect, because people just kind of digest it as fast food. And even just like, not just the music, but like, you know, you got the cover art, you looked at the artwork.
The cover was everything.
Yeah, yeah. Or you read the lyrics or how did it get
Yes.
made and stuff like that.
Yes. Yes.
And you extended that, as you said, into mixtapes, because as you said, it was currency, because most likely you'd give a mixtape to somebody you had your eye on. You know, oh, I like this band or I like this
Right. Or
person
you'd
or whatever.
exchange, become
Yeah.
best friends. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
It was, yeah. Oh my God, you're making me. Oh my God, it's so true. We used, like, I'm thinking of Journey, Van Halen, is the cover and the inside and the lyrics and like then we would all geek out because, you know, before, again, we didn't have Pinterest. We had magazines of our rock stars, our teen throbs, and we would like literally wallpaper our
Yeah.
bedroom wall with the covers or the posters of everybody like doing their shot, like whatever. And, you know, and we'd all share information or like go source information about, you know, where do they, like, I know my cousin is a big, huge Beatles fan, like
Right.
Abbey Road. You ask her anything about the Beatles, about Abbey Road when they were recording, she could tell you who was in that room and like what they
Oh,
were doing.
nice.
Like, it's just like, yes. And then before us, because I grew up with my grandparents and great grandparents who, you know, grew up in the Depression and before television, that like the radio was all they had. And every night, you know, they would all be around the radio to listen to the music. And then they had one of my favorite things, my grandfather, who used to play the ukulele and the guitar, and he taught me all the songs. But they had what we would call TV shows now,
Yeah.
radio shows.
Yeah.
And he would mimic. There was one very famous show at the time, the 40s. The actor or the character was Digger O'Dell, your like neighborhood undertaker, and he would have very satiric thing. But then it would be blessed with music. So my grandfather was, I'm like, he would tell me, and we sit and talk about, before we had TV, these were what we used to do, and these were the shows, and these were the music that we listened to. And he played the guitar, and I'm like, well, introduce me to that music. What does that sound like? And he was a really great singer, and he could just, you know, it was just a sweet memory. And because of you, I got to go revisit all that I had like hadn't thought about in years.
You can just feel that as well. Like, you know, for people listening to this show, check out the video, because you see, you know, Kim was really like enthusing about it, very smiley. But this is what, as she said, it's what music does. It's that really intimate connection that it forges. And as you mentioned it using in your coaching practice, it's a very simple yet very individual tool. Like, people can talk about their music tastes and what they're into and this kind of thing, and that's a great conversation on its own. But when people find it for themselves to aid with emotions processing, or bringing back memories,
elevating,
yeah, and that's before you talk about, you know, using it in a kind of scientific way. Like, people talk about frequencies. Play this music at this frequency to initiate healing, calming, soothing, focus, all these things. And
I have incredible tangible stories of how that is true and how that has changed lives around my life and people around me. So yes, there's the science of it, there's the emotions of it, there's the relationships of it. Yeah.
But then, you know, the best thing I think we all like as human beings are stories. It's not just confined to kids at bedtime. They're like, bedtime story. Well, we do it all the time. What's a film? What's a TV show? It's a story.
It is.
And we all watch it, and we all enjoy it. And we all and take whatever we want from it. And that's, you know, one of the things that we like about it. It's the narrative. We can relate ourselves into the narrative. That's why, you know, lyrics hit hard,
Yes.
melodies hit hard. And as I said, it's going to be individual for everybody. And it's something as music hits the whole range of emotions. It's not tapped into.
Yes, it's the rain.
You know?
I call it the rainbow. It's the
Yeah,
it covers the rain. It does. And do you remember, like, we were one of the playlist, because they were an obscure group, but they were the first video on MTV. If anybody remembers MTV, the Boogaloos. I thought that was the most ridiculous name even back then. I'm like, what the frick is a Boogaloo? And they were like, really, it was like the punk area, you know, like, you know, Devo was, you know, that whole era. But I was like, what the frick is a Boogaloo? But their lyrics were good. Like, it was a great tune, but like video killed the radio star.
Yeah.
Right? I was always the kid liking music a generation back, and like songwriters. Like, I remember Christopher Cross,
Right.
who wrote, you know, Arthur, the soundtrack to Arthur, and he was a prolific, like, you know, Jennifer Warren, prolific songwriter. Talk about lyrics. But when MTV came, he didn't fit the mold. He was just an average looking guy, a little bit on the pudgy side, right? Curly, frizzy hair, beautiful voice, impeccable lyrics. But his career changed. He did not, because of the video and all that glam stuff, Duran Duran, everybody, he wasn't able to visually cross over. So it was like, like, this song is like, you know, like very techno, but I was like, oh wow, like, yeah, MTV revolutionized video, revolutionized the music industry in ways that at the time we couldn't imagine.
It's a great shout. I mean, it's a watershed moment. As you say, it wasn't.
It was. We were like, that was
about,
history in the making.
Yeah, it wasn't just about how you sounded. It's now how you look as well. And now that's the whole point of the channel. It's music videos that, you know, didn't just show a band performing. It was like, okay, what kind of artistic
story? It was back to what you said.
Far out idea. Yeah.
They had to create stories.
That's a good one.
They did. They create story. We look forward to it. And then, do you remember behind the scenes, music behind the scenes, where you get all the dirt about with all the drama or all the struggle behind the scenes to make the music? Do you remember that?
Yeah, because you had the competitors coming, like VH1 did a load of that. Like, you know, behind the scenes documentary, and followed this, the making of this, whatever. So you got, as you said, more insight and how's it all done, basically.
Yeah.
So it adds to, you know, your recollection, and you get to sort of peek behind the curtain of how things are done. And you're right, it became a sort of an all-round package. You know, it was like, okay, who looks good, who can sell well, not just musically, but, you know, who looks good, because, you know, everybody's tuning into that. Because you know, at the time, probably channels were still on the lower side. Yes, you know, with cable and satellite, there's more potential. But of the major channels, you still, you know, the reason MTV sticks as something you remember is like, well, that would seem to be the first, and it's still on today.
I haven't watched it in years, but I remember I remember being glued to that station. Like, it was on before school, after school, in the background. We'd all tune in for the new video by so and so. Like,
and it'd be his talking point in the office, in the playground, and tomorrow, right? But I think nowadays, again, I've not seen it for ages either, but I think kind of they feel like they need to drop the M. It's not music anymore. It's a reality show, and just very little to do with the music. But look, that reflects, I think, how music is consumed nowadays. Anyway, it's not ironically about the music. It's now back to who can sell well, who can we churn the most money out of before we move on.
Let's talk more about that, because I know music has changed so much, right? Everyone's dropping singles. No one buys albums anymore. They buy it on Spotify, Apple, whatever. An interesting conversation. You know, I remember when Kiss first came out, and like my neighbors, the 5 boys, they knew one of them was related to one of the guys, and they would be their doubles. they would dress up as Kiss and be the decoys. But
All
they
right.
did the band, but they had a big like what do you call it? It's a patio with a roof on a pergola, and they used to do dress up as kids in the. I mean, they used to play. They were all musicians. The kids were all, but they used to do like in concert. You go to my neighborhood. It was like they had a Kiss concert right around the corner. We all sat there like with our lawn
Oh,
chairs
like
and
a
like
tribute band.
yeah. Well,
All right.
the time, but we were all all kids are in bands, but they literally had the regalia and did all that. But
Yeah.
Gene Simmons
Mm.
was talking, interviewed lately by somebody, and he was talking about how the industry has changed. And one of the things he was saying, he's like, you'll never see, Kiss, Journey, the big bands. He goes, because the industry has changed for
Yeah.
better or for worse,
Yeah.
and you don't have these record companies with these huge dollars to put on a major concert or to put the money into the marketing to launch like a whole full-fledged album or like national tour. Like, back in the day, you had to be hired on by a record company. They gave,
Yeah.
they've spent millions on you, right, to promote you,
Mm.
and then you got paid and they take care of everything else, whatever. He goes, that's all changed. And he said his opinion was, you'll never see music like a Journey or a Van Halen or a Kiss again, because the infrastructure isn't there. And I'm like, okay. But on the other hand, right, American Idol, that like
Mm.
20 years, and YouTube, these kids are being, a lot of kids who would have never been picked up by the record labels, they would have never looked like the way, they're all making, music and their money, and they're having careers because of social media, YouTube, um, you name it. I probably don't even know all of them. TikTok. A lot of these kids who are talented or songwriters, they don't need the record companies to get their music out. And
Yeah.
that's like, or you might have a different take on it.
No, it's a very astute observation from the both of you. If Gene Simmons saying, there won't be another. I resonate with that point of like a big era defining, generation defining band from which you get like a movement. So you've mentioned people like the Beatles already. You talk about the '60s guitar band era. It was them. It was the Stones. It was the Who. It was,
and they had a whole management team and corporation backing them, right?
Right. But you could probably go through each era and define a guitar-based band, which just happens to be, I think, a commonality amongst the big, well-known, stellar bands. There are individual artists as well. I'm not saying that, you had your Elvis, you had Michael Jackson,
Right,
all these kind of things. But I'm talking about an era-defining band. People nowadays, okay, they say, okay, there's like the likes of Coldplay, the likes of Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift. It's like, yep, fine, look, that they've made their mark and this kind of thing. But I say so it's been what, 60 odd years since the Beatles were around. Are we going to talk about these same artists in 60 years?
That's what he was saying. That was the whole thing. He's like, yeah, we got a lot of talent, but 100 years from now, are we going to remember them? No.
Yeah. And you're right in saying that the technology we have nowadays allows for people to, skip, if you will, the record label process, but it doesn't mean it's any more less competitive. You're right in saying, like, those big bands that, if you look at their backstory, every one of them had a moment of chance or luck or fate, that they were playing somewhere and a record agent happened to be there, right? It's littered with many a coincidence, right? But nowadays, it's like, it's more about the product. Like, these will sell well. And yes, that's the aim of a record agent, to make the money from the artist. But with that seems to be so much more control in terms of like creativity and putting a homogenous product out there. So that's why it all feels like, okay, it's good, but what's different? What's era defining and stuff like that? So when you put the two together, it's like, you could upload something on YouTube now, but then you have to have such a machine behind you to get that interest, those eyes. And even then, it feels like YouTube, Spotify at all don't really push artists in terms of money making. So if you did want to be the next, whatever, Bruce Dickinson, Van Halen, Jimi Hendrix, whomever, it's so
they
competitive.
were showmen. They were
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean there are exceptions, like what Taylor Swift has done. God bless her, and I use her as a case study about relationships and how
Yeah.
she's like really monetized her community and her Swifties, and she's
Mm.
created a movement. And to see her, I remember her as a little girl on the guitar, like barely 14, to Cirque du Soleil now.
Yeah.
um and even like Pink with what she's doing with her act and all that, but it's very far and few in between.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that you still have those major artists and bands either reuniting or coming back, and actually there being so much more interest because so people who've watched the show previously or know me otherwise, massive Oasis fan. They reunited last year and are going to play this summer. And just reading a little bit about the let's say preparations, but their viewpoint on it. They were saying like it's insane to think that when we're going to tour again, there are people that weren't born when we're playing
Yes.
to, that weren't around when we first played and were touring the first time round, and you're like, well, I think that's the groundswell from passing down. Like you've mentioned so many people in your playlist about your grandparents, your family, and this kind of thing. And you've mentioned with your grandfather, talking to him about playing the guitar and picking it up. That's a pass down thing. So from these bands
Yes.
that are coming down nowadays, they'll listen to their older brother, their dad, or their mother, or their whomever, and it passed down to ultimately now they're the ones experiencing it from themselves. It's like, look, that's how you string it through the generations.
Well, that's I think one of the nice, we talk about the generation gaps,
Mm.
right? Everyone thinks like, oh, you're 2000, like the generation before, like, oh, you're so uncool, or you're 2000 late. But one of the things that, from my experience, that brought us all together was the music.
Yeah.
Like, I really wasn't born in the 40s, right? But I have such great memories. All my grandparents and her five sisters and the five uncles, they all grew up ballroom dancing. Like after work, they'd go to, in our neck of the woods in Connecticut, Pleasure Beach, Pleasure
Mm-hmm.
Ballroom, which was at the time bigger than the Ritz in New York. Like it was the place. And like after they worked in the factory or whatever, but they all got dolled up. I see pictures of them. Like, you guys were all like Hollywood stars with your dresses and this and that.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm like, well, this is what we wore back then, Kim. Like, I'm going, oh my God, like even the guys, and they would ballroom dance, and even well into their 80s and 90s at the weddings and different things, they would all dance like, Dancing with the Stars today. Like you see the ballroom dancing and I'd be like, and I grew up as a dancer. I did ballet, jazz. And I look at them and going,
Oh wow.
but I was like, but I didn't ballroom dance. I was like, and to watch them and like to do, and they could dance.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, the swing and the jitter, and I'm like, what? I go, but that was normal. Then they go, Kim, every weekend, that's what we did,
So
and I was like,
it's that communal aspect, wasn't it? As you said, like it was
they
very
all
like
met.
clock off at 5, get ready, and we're all down the dance hall or wherever they were,
That's
and in
where
your best
if you
Sunday
ask
they
them
wear.
who, well, I could tell you stories about each couple, but they all met at the ballroom.
Yeah.
Who had a friend and said, here, I want you to meet, or noticed them from over the room. Can I have a dance with you? And like, can I come back? Will you come, would you like me to take you to dancing? Like, all that was like, what we call our generation, like the bar. Let's go to the bar. Theirs was, let's go to the ballroom, whether you went with the girls, you went with the guys, you went as couples. That's
That's
what,
so cool.
and I look back at the pictures when they were young, and I'm like, never mind, they were all stunning, but I was like, you guys were like glam gods. Like, I could put you in Hollywood. Like, I could just, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart. And I'm like, and I'm like, my generation, who's up in the messy bun, we're all in sweats, and I'm like, just like, wow. But that was part of their life. Music was like the ballroom dancing, and even until their geriatric years,
We
it
seem
just
like
stayed with them.
they were just having fun, like genuinely. None of this like pressure to impress or
No, yeah, I
anything
was
like
the
that.
one in competitive dance. No, they did it for relaxation
Yeah,
and
and
fun and
and
friendship.
as you said, feels like conversations, friendships, romantic relationships, or thing came as a natural byproduct of like, you're all there
Yes.
together. It probably was a safer time, not having to worry about dodgy things going on or
Well, you could,
dodgy
it's so
people.
funny that you said that, because I was, asking them what it was like for you growing up, and,
Yeah.
like the mingling, and they go, Kim, we could go as girls to the ballroom, just as girls, and we could, a dance was just a dance.
Mm.
Like back in then, they had like 10-cent dancers, like whatever. Like, I'll take a dance. Like, some of the people teach them, but like you could go and not know anybody, dance the light fantastic, and go home, and no, you didn't have to be dusted for fingerprints if like if you
Yeah.
weren't. Yeah, it was a place to go and be with the girls and communicate, or just meet people, or just, they talked about like, oh, we had friends, like we weren't romantic, but we love to dance, so we go and meet as friends, and we'd all go dance.
That's it. As simple
That
as
was
that.
it.
So, coming back to what you're saying about conversations, do you think there's a lot of conversation happening nowadays amongst each other about music? Because another thing that I mentioned before, like my friend was saying, that we're missing that communal aspect where we gather around listening to an album, that kind of thing. But I don't know if it's just my observations here, but it just feels like I'm not saying everybody has to like the same music as each other. I always see that as a bonus now. But it's more like, as we're talking about music and what it brings and our enjoyment, we're having a great conversation about it. But it just feels like with others, it just lands flat. Like,
I
it could start with basic questions like, what kind of music you into? What was the last gig you went to? What was your favorite gig you went to? And it just feels like, yeah, I went and saw. No, okay, so like music taste. Oh, I like a bit of hip hop, R&B. Okay, fine. Did you see anyone recently? Are you going to see anyone? Oh, I'm going to see Beyonce or Usher or whomever
Right.
next week. Or I've seen them. Like, yeah, it was good. Wow, that's it. I don't know. Is that common? Am I?
Well,
Am I seeing something weird?
I haven't been to a concert in years for a lot of reasons, but I can remember concerts right now. Like, God bless Taylor Swift, like $400 or $500 a ticket.
No,
My
yeah.
friend, my friends who are like even older than me, yeah, they've gone and spent like, even 30 years ago, $300 for Barbara Streisand, or to go to see Elton John,
Mm.
Bruce. Okay, I understand, like Billy Joel, but tickets right now, they used to be, even though they were stretched for us on our budget, everyone could go. Almost anyone could go, whether you're in the bleacher seats or you were front row, like whatever. You knew somebody who knew who somebody. You can get it
Mm-hmm.
at your price. Um, I think concerts were more affordable
Yeah. Oh
back
God,
then,
yes. Oh
and they
yes.
were more of a thing because, right, we didn't have the technology that we have now. All we had was VH1 and MTV. So I think concert going was more of a culture thing
It feels like an
of our
extension of,
generation.
yeah, like extension of the album listening, the group that you had, and you heard there's a gig going on. You said someone will know someone, and I know this is a throwback, but you actually got a physical ticket in your hand, a paper
Yes,
ticket.
yes, yes.
I,
And my guy was my friend Denise's. He was when they went to college together. He was in our fraternity. But Andy always could get tickets to anything. If something was sold out, he's like, I can get you tickets. What do you want to pay?
oh,
Like
nice.
whatever. So yeah, he was the one, like Van Halen and this and that. So he was the guy. He's like, you need tickets? I'll get you tickets. Um, but it was an event. We all went to the concert. We all went to eat afterwards to talk about the
Yeah,
concert.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it was like our life. I can remember stories about, like, oh my god. Um, but it just was like, it was a part. We always went to a concert. It was like, we knew, like in Connecticut, Hartford was like the big,
Yeah,
or the
yeah,
New
yeah.
Haven famous New Haven Coliseum, which is no longer there. You knew, and like we knew like a year ahead of time who was coming, and we had like, mom, like, we were like, mom, we, like, it was in the budget, like, okay, I know you want to go see them, okay, or like, you better go work because you need to see them, and like,
Uh huh.
it just, it was like every month we were going to a Van Halen, Duran, we got to go see this one, we got to go see that one. Oh, this one's coming, like Pat Benatar's coming over there. um I don't know if it's just because I don't have children, or like, I remember my sister, I remember my little surrogate nieces, nephews, um New Kids on the Block. This is like now they're in their 30s, but they all wanted to go to New Kids on the Block, and there was no one to take them to go see New Kids on the Block. Auntie said, "Okay, I'll be the one to go." I had, you know, or you know, Auntie will take us to go see NSYNC, and I'm like, okay, like, and then I fell in love with them too, and I'm like, you know, they're like this big, I'm this big, and I'm like geeking out with them.
Now you're like, if NSYNC are touring, I'm like, those kids will come with me. It's fine.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, I'll take you. You know, I don't know what the heck they are, but it was just, I don't know. I think from my perspective, it was more because how many families can afford 5 people in the family at $300-400 a pop?
Oh, no.
You know, tickets back in our day were like 25, 50. Like if you're really splurging and you got, you know, $100 ticket.
Yeah, and that's without considering travel, accommodation if you're coming from far, food, drink. You know, that all doesn't go away. You might get a bit of merchandise while you're there.
You had to get the shirt. Come on, like, you know, like you don't know. And then you used to bring the album to get it, the meet and greet. If you did a meet and greet for whatever.
Yeah, the signing. Yeah, absolutely.
They sign your album. Like, that was the best.
Do you have a favorite gig that you remember that sticks in your mind?
The one that sticks in my mind, there was 2, but Duran was my band. Like, I have a friend, Nancy, who's like, to this day, she's like, when Duran comes, she's like, we all know she loved, but I love them. And it was a big deal. And I think it wasn't my first concert, but I think it was my second. And my mom knew that. I was like, Mom, I'll do whatever you want. Like, she's like, I know you want to go to Duran. And then I just got my license, and I was going to drive. You know, we were going to drive. And it snowed. Like, bad. And I'm like, I was beside myself. I'm like, Mom, I got to go. Mom, I got to go. And she's like, my mom was formed, but like, she knew how passionate I was, but like, what do I do with her? So anyway, we did a workaround where my friend's older sister and her boyfriend would take my car, and they would drive us to Hartford. It was about an hour away.
Right.
And my mom was like, we're like, no, please, Mom, please. We got caught in an ice storm.
Ooh.
We made it to the concert, and it was fabulous. But we couldn't make it back, and I think we all somehow, I don't know if we went to the hotel. I think we missed that day of school, and I was like, just be safe. Like, what, we'll get a hotel. Like, we'll figure it out. Like, you know, just be safe. But yeah. I mean, if my mother only saw what we were driving through to get there, and we're like, please make sure we get there, and she did, and we were all like dripping wet. We looked like little water rats, but we had the best time. You know, and we were all together, and thank God, you know, her sister and her boyfriend, like, they were the older ones. They were like maybe, you know, 18. They were like, it was all good, but that was an adventure and a half. So that was like what you do. Like, I think now I'm like, oh my God, we almost sacrificed ourselves for a freaking concert. But at the time, it was like, we have to.
Hey, that's dedication, man. When you know, come hell or high water.
Like, life or death. Like, we didn't care, like, on the Mother Nature. We just had to go see Duran. And it was worth every minute. But the other one that I remember is my first, I would say, rock concert, because I was like, Duran, yes, but you don't get heard at a Duran concert. Rick Springfield, yes, but like everyone's. But Van Halen, Andy got tickets. He's like, we're all gonna go. We were all dating, you know, whoever in the college. He goes, we're going to Van Halen. I'm like, I can't go to see Van Halen, and I'm like, because they got floor tickets, right? And I'm like, they're gonna rush the stage. I'll get killed. Like, no, you're not. You can find him. Yeah, like, and literally, because we were like in the front, and you know how they rush.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. Thank God, like, the boys just picked me up and like put me on that. Like, what do I even do? Like, just stand on this seat, whatever. But it was an amazing concert, amazing. But it was culture shock for me, because I'm like, you know, they were a different clientele.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know what to do. They're like, just follow us. So that was you know, I had an easier time traipsing through the ice storm in Hartford than it was to understand how to deal with a mosh pit, you know?
Oh, there's nothing that can prepare you for that. People can tell you about it. You can watch videos about it, because you don't know when it will happen. You have an inkling, okay, of the song. Like, it might happen out, like, if it's one that everybody gets going on, but like where it might kick off, you don't
The
know.
boys knew because this was their music, and I'm like, dude, I'm clueless. Like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, you know, put me in front of a Barbara Streisand concert, I know how to handle it. This I don't understand. But no, that was fun. That was fun too. That was fun.
Wow, what a story. Going through an ice storm. That's dedication. That's
Yeah, that was
dedication.
just, I think about that. I'm like, that was one because you maybe, I'm like, oh my God, I remember that. Oh my God, we begged, we pleaded, oh my God, we like, and then it was like what my mother's, all of our mothers were afraid of happened. And never
Yeah, yeah,
mind,
yeah.
like Gladys's sister wasn't that much older than us. And here she is, she's got all these kids in the car. And, you know, besides bringing us home alive, she had to like make sure we saw the Duran Duran concert no matter what.
And that's probably before, uh, all the
Phones.
technology we've got nowadays to keep in contact with people, just
Yeah,
relying on a
payphones,
phone box somewhere.
payphones. Yeah,
That's it.
mom. Yeah, mom. What's you okay? Hey, yeah, the concert was great, but yeah, we can't make it home.
Oh, what a fun phone call that would have been. But hey, look, I mean, as I said, we will go to great lengths to see our favourite bands and artists and stuff
Oh
like
my
that.
God,
And
it was live or die. Like we couldn't.
that's the
There
name,
was
man.
no way we could not live without seeing them. Like it was just like,
Yeah.
let's shoot us now. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was like.
Oh, so good, so good. So, as I said, I know in the lead up to the show, you sent so many examples of people connecting together with music and some of the stuff you've mentioned. Like, I loved all that detail that you said. One of the lines that really stuck out, saying, "I can identify life-defining moments and how the music has helped me cope or enjoyed them." I thought that's such a great line.
Yeah.
Did you want to pick some examples out and share them with us?
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, one of the things, it had different meanings all through the years, but the memories of my grandparents and the great aunts who I miss terribly, if I want to remember them or, you know, stay connected to them, Glenn Miller, the swing, right? Swing that, like, I can't, with all my dancing experience, I still can't get that freaking swing step. Like, right. It's just a different thing. But, I can just put that music on and just imagine that they're dancing, or like, even if I just kind of like, right. And just remember them with such joy. Um, a fun thing, because two memories. I remember the story that was told to me was, as a baby, I was in diapers, right? The minute music, my father always had the record going.
Yeah.
I was in love with, I was born in 67, The Fifth Dimension, Marilyn McCoo and her husband, and The Age of Aquarius, whatever that, the Hair. I even love it as a kid. I love the Broadway show Hair. But that song, they're like, Kim, that music would come on, you'd be in your little diaper or whatever, and you'd start dancing around, like you'd be doing something, and I'd start dancing, and I'm like, and they have pictures of it, and I didn't appreciate it as much until my niece is now 21, but when she was little, her same thing with music, she'd be doing something, and she loved Yanni, which is fun because our Armenian, right? That's like she's in Florida, the family's up here, but she loved, my mother loved Yanni music. She would just, whatever she was doing, she'd stand up little thing and she posed, like she would like be a little choreographer like this. She'd be like this, and then the music would change. And I'm like, I was like, because they said, Kim, she's so much like you. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, this is one of those moments. Like she would just get up and like be like, you know, like in pose, like ready for the music to start and start dancing around her little body. But we used to have that, but always, because my great grandparents were from the great grandparents were from Turkey. My grandmother was alive, and my father's parents were. He was first generation. My mother was second. But Armenian music always. And my mother loved Armenian music. She was a great dancer in Armenian music, and always at going to dances. That's how my parents met Armenian dances as youth. They'd have them in Chicago, New York. They'd all do the circuit. So we always had, my uncles all played the djembe, the clarinet, all the.
Oh, nice, very musical then.
Yeah, we have always music around us.
Brilliant.
So I grew up with all the Western Armenian music, and my mother knew personally like the greats, Onik Dinkjan, Johnny Babarian. I think Johnny played at my parents' wedding.
Oh, wow.
Like they were like the Elton Johns of the Armenian community. Like they were the guys.
Wow.
So we had all that music, and I haven't heard it in a while because, you know, as the years go on, the newer generation does. They're all Armenian folkloric, but in researching, I said, how can I put that in? Because I have the album downstairs, but the Vospigian original, like of all the original stuff from like the 70s, and I could tell it was on YouTube, but they were playing the vinyl. Because I'm like, oh my God, that brings back such freaking memories. Um, but I grew up in our church and like went to sports weekends and we all had dances and all over the place. Um, but just to hear him and now his kids, Johnny Barbarian's kids, probably the grandkids are now playing, but they had such a sound. And Armenian music is very community, like line. People would say, "What's Armenian music?" Think of line dancing, Greek dancing, Lebanese music, all the same thing. This we all interchange. You know, I know the Arabic music. We all know it, like, and they know the Armenian music, and then the Greek. It's all everyone played everything. Um, but what was so nice about Armenian dances, you'd have the kids who did all like the really active dancing, like the Michigan hop, where you're jumping around and all that. But then there would be like the Vospigian, what I gave you, Hele, which was a very group community where everyone holds arms, really, they just kind of sway. But to see the older, like especially the older guys, they would take the handkerchief and they would dance, and you'd have the younger generation dancing with the older generation. I remember my mom, who was like, you know, 30, 40, her 50s, they all loved to dance with my mother because my mother knew how to dance, but they would just crack us up. Like my uncle Jimmy, the scarf, and you know, it's like and you lead with the scarf, and he would dance, and you shower the girl, like you shower the girl with the attention, and the girl's like playing hard to get. It's like a whole story. Armenian dancing is a storytelling. Basically,
Right.
village, girl meets boy, boy meets girl. Oh, but come to me. I've got like, oh, you know, like take me to your father. I want to marry you. Like, oh, like, you know, whatever. And like the whole community veiling the girl and saying, okay, no, you can look at her. It's just that it's storytelling. But he used to, and like when the beat would be like very like they do like the solo, my uncle and the older guys, I crack up. They'd come down on their knees and like they'd shimmy like this and go back, and like it was like a starry moment. And the girls would be, and he was a good dancer, but he took it very. We just love it. My cousin, his granddaughter, got married 2 years ago. She's Greek. She's Greek and Armenian. Her father's Greek, but she never grew up with the Armenian side. But so they were playing the Greek Armenian music, and she's like, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, come on. I took her, and you know, I did the scarf leading it, and then my cousin Craig, who's her mother's cousin, like we're the next generation.
Yeah.
He's a jokester, and he goes, give me the scarf, I gotta play Uncle Jimmy's. And like he's like, you know, doing with her, showering, like saying, "Come here, like let me." Like
she
let
was
me
like,
show you
Kim,
off.
what have you got me into here? It's like, what is this?
But he just stepped in. He goes, I gotta do it for Uncle Jimmy, and like showcased her, and like, and then he got, not that he was as graceful as my Uncle Jimmy, but he got on his knees and did the whole thing, and it was like, it was
brilliant.
yeah, it was like, Uncle Jimmy, you're here, right? Like you're not like, and it was so. No one put Craig up to it. It's like he just knew how could we make Uncle Jimmy, because if he was there, didn't matter if he was in a wheelchair, he would have found a way
Yeah.
to dance with her. But just the memories of going to the kef. They call it Armenian dancing if it's a dance, we call it a kef. Just going, and you don't have to. I used to bring my friends. Like, I don't know. I'm like, just take someone's hand, pinky. They'll break your pinky. Like, make sure because, like, you know, don't pull you break. But I'm like, just follow their feet. And by the end, everyone's Armenian. Like, they didn't know what to do. And even if you went to a dance, you didn't have to go with anybody, because you're going to meet people, and you're going to be in the line. And before you know it, you're going to have a friend to the left, a friend to the right of you. It just was, you know. And then I used to teach it when I got older, and then I became part of I danced professionally, semi-professionally, with a troupe in New York. But it was part of our culture. It was friendships. Everyone fit in. You know, it didn't matter if you were shy, cool, not cool. You know, in the line, everyone was, even like people like, I've never done this before, like just grab hands, and when we go. You know, like even if you just got to walk, like just, you know, just stay sandwiched in between, you'll be fine.
You'll find a place there. But it sounds like very like unifying together experience. You know, this is not like you need to have all the technical know-how and seen this before. It was, as you said, that sense of, we've talked, you know, we've spoken about how music is such a unifying factor, and yeah, that if you can play an instrument and all that kind of thing and generate the sound, the buzz, that's one thing, but it's what inspires people to then combine movement and dance with it. Like, you know, like you know, many people have spoken about the power of movement that we can have, right? That, yes, music stirs up a lot inside us in terms of relatability, memories, and connections and stories and that kind of thing. But when you align it with dance and movement as well, it's like, you know, it's like almost like a psychosomatic response.
It is.
You just move, you're not telling your brain, right, I'm going to move at this point. It's like it just happens.
It's expression. For
yeah,
me,
that's
even,
it.
Yeah, right.
Because
I could freestyle, but I always, there's structured dance. But to be able to dance, and for me, movement was everything. All my life. Like the ability to move was everything. And I had a car accident in '95 when I first of many, unfortunately, got young kids with red lights love to just find me sitting there minding my own business. But I lost my ability to move. And that was a huge crossroads for me. And like, what do I do with myself? Like, you know, I could always move, and the joy of dance. But yeah, so Armenian was always part of the background, and just having a community, and even my friends like, what's that kind of music? I'm like, it's so great. Like, well, it's Armenian music, and it's like, you know, from Armenia is in two parts, Eastern, Western. I said, this is more Western, Turkish influence, and then we've got the Eastern, which is a little bit different, but the songs are still the same. But yeah, growing up, you know, everyone knows, right? Growing up isn't always easy. And you've got ups and downs, and yeah, I can take music, but one of the sticks, I loved sticks. Like I was like old school, like give me any ballet, I could tell you the music and all that, and then but I could listen to AC/DC and appreciate it. But I love Styx. Like Styx was a very popular band, and I'm like, oh, I love them. I just love the percussion and the music. But I can remember graduating 8th grade. It was a small Catholic school. I was only two of the non-Catholic. I'm Christian, but not Catholic, Roman Catholic, of the whole school. I have really fond memories of some of my teachers, but that time in my life, I was really excited to go to a different school. We were all such a small school from 3rd grade to 8th grade. It was one class of everything. So we were together, whether we liked it or not, whether you fit in or not. Some of them all the way from K through 8. I was 3 through 8. Couldn't wait to leave, but was afraid to leave. And one of my dearest friends who was in the 7th grade, Gary, we had like an 8th grade dance, or 7th, 8th grade dance. And we were just very close. And he asked me to dance, like in that one of the Styx musics, I think, Come Sail Away. And I remember just bawling. I was just like, he's like, Kim, it's going to be okay. I'm like, I know. Like, I was like so excited to leave, but so afraid, you know, so excited to go and so afraid to leave, even though I didn't like being where I was. It was such a mixed emotion. That song, I can remember that moment, just like.
I think that's going to resonate with so many people, because like that is such a, you're on the cusp of moment, right? You're moving from, you know, young adolescent to teenager to young adult, and that's you know, we talk about the formative years anyway. But it's those moments to stick, because like you've got, you know, at that age there's so much hope for the future. There's so much like, okay, here's what I want to do, here's my next step, but with it comes uncertainty, because
and it has goodbyes.
You know? Exactly.
I purposely wasn't going to the sister high school. I'm like, no, I've had enough. I'm doing something completely different. But in that moment, it struck me that I wouldn't be like even the ones I didn't really like care for.
Yeah.
But like, and I wouldn't be Gary, I'm not going to see you. When is the chances are you and I are going to see each other?
And it is at that moment, like, you know, a prom or a dance thing, like the big social occasion at the end of it. It's like, oh shit. And it creeps up on you. Like, you don't realize it's not your last exam, it's not your last class, it's this social thing. You're like, oh fuck.
And even though I don't like all of you, but we've been together for 5 years, and like, you know, we've all been through it. So I remember that. And just, I'm thinking about, I could look at the playlist, but I mark everything, like anything that happened in my life, the deaths of my grandmother, my great grandmother. My uncle passed away when I was 16. A fun story with my I used to be the babysitter for my great uncle's daughter, my cousin Cheryl, who was like a sister to me. She got married and had kids. She was like my big sister all my life. When she got married, she had kids, and I became the babysitter because her husband was a band singer. He had a band, and when he had a wedding, he did weddings and different things. So he would always like bring Cheryl, even though he was going to be on stage. She would be there with the other wives, and so they would have a babysitter. But he played all, like every anniversary party that we had for the aunts or uncles. His band, we hired his band. Any of the weddings, we he played, and he was a brilliant he was a brilliant singer. But like Earth, Wind and Fire, he could do Earth, Wind and Fire, September, or Let's Groove Tonight better than even Earth, and that's saying a lot.
Right, better than the
Earth,
original.
he had a deep voice like that, and he could get, even the people who had two left feet would get up and dance with him.
Wow.
And his band was just amazing. They were all amazing musicians. But just, living behind the scenes and with him, with the band, and just when he at the wedding, our cousin, when the cousins got married or whatever, like dancing to his music, all of us dancing together, and the Armenian music, because he'd play the Armenian music in the breaks, and then they'd all play all the songs of the day. Roller skating was really big for me growing up, right? And my dance teacher was like, if you go on skates, I'll freaking break your legs. Like, what are you doing? But I would do it anyway. That was like, the roller skating rink was like the mall.
Yeah.
Right. And all the all the 80s music and all that. That time, like all that music, the Gap Band, I remember Michael Jackson, Off the Wall. I remember when that came out. It was the year my cousins at his communion, he was Russian Orthodox, his communion, we're in my aunt's living room. We're all dancing, grooving. That music was brilliant. Like, I even knew then, I'm like, this music is brilliant. We're all dancing. I hit my toe. Back in the day, those couches were really substantial. I hit my toe. I remember being coming to go to the hospital. I thought I broke my toe, and I was a dancer. Like, oh my God, I broke. And my father's like, maybe we can go in the morning. And my mother's like, John, her toe can be broken. We got to go. It's like 1 o'clock, but we got to go. Okay, because he got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm in the hospital. I'm like, I don't know what I did to my toe. Do you have to take it off? But everyone was like, we just saw like, oh my God, like Kim broke her foot.
Listening to Michael Jackson.
You're listening to Michael Jackson, Off the Wall. Growing up, my cousin, he spent like 12. He spent 12 hours a day in the basement with his drums. He was brilliant. Oh, wow. He was brilliant. He was always like, he would play football with everybody, all of us, but if he was, everything was, his whole life was his drums. He introduced me to Rush, and I was like,
another 80s classic.
I didn't know that. I'm a dancer. Give me like Swan Lake or Broadway. And I used to sit down there with him because we just got along all the time. I'm like, you won't be outside. I'll come sit with you. And I'm like, okay, tell me about Rush. Like, he's a musician too. Even as a young kid, I'm like, what? And he would show me. And that's why I learned Geddy Lee. And I'm like, oh my God, he's a really good bassist. Like, he's one of the best, Kim. And I loved Rush because he loved Rush, but the complicated syncopation, like that music is even as a music theory person, Rush, Nevermind was a great band. Like, if you understood music, you could go down the rabbit hole listening to Geddy Lee's bass and the drummer. So like, to me, it helped me understand. Well, to me, Rush elevated like AC/DC and all the heavy metal bands, which were great, which my friends, it gave me a bridge, right? Because I was a little geek that listened to Broadway and was dancing 5 times a week. And he was into drumming, but he was drumming and playing contemporary music. And then there's my kids' friends who are all into like Judas Priest and heavy metal, AC/DC. It gave me a bridge to be able to relate to everybody, because I didn't. I was like, I don't even know what that music is. Like, why do I don't even understand the words to it. So it just, even all of us who were like different strokes, like different kids, his ability doing what he did helped me bridge, understand the music of the alternative, what do you call it, left or right, versus, the folk songs that I grew up with.
That feels
Or
quite rare though, as a perspective of, like, as you mentioned, if you're new or alien to other people's kind of music, you're like, well, that's not my music, this is mine. And I know that there seems to be a lot of prevailing attitude nowadays saying, I like a bit of everything. I'm like,
not back then, not back then. I was like, everyone loved me, but they go, Kim, you're weird. I'm like, I know, because I grew up with older people. I grew up with genocide survivors, right? They don't like Inchkinesko, like, what is this music? Like, it's pop. Like, what's pop? Inchia pop. Like, they didn't, my grandmother or or the people that I grew up in the church, they don't know what that was. They're listening to Vosbigian or 40s and 50s music. My mother, love her and my cousin's parents, they all grew up in the 50s, right?
yeah,
Their heyday was 50s music.
yeah,
My uncle was the one that played the drums, his stepfather, which is blended family. We all grew up as a neighborhood, and then they got divorced, and then people paired up at later. But he taught. So I had my grandfather. I had the Armenians teaching me all the old folklores and the songs and the history of dancing. Like, why do we dance this way? It's a story, Kim. I learned Armenian dancing by you tell the story. Like, okay. Then, do you remember the life books? We had encyclopedias in my day. I'm really, guys, if you are younger, we had encyclopedias, these books.
yeah,
And then the life books collections, like on fish, on whatever, like whatever the topic was, there was a life book for
right,
that whole thing. There was a life book on, I don't know if it was, like painting artists, things that
okay,
you'd see in the Metropolitan Museum, like the Mona Lisa. But anyway, my uncle, and I think this is where I get it, my Uncle Paul, you take any bit of music he would pull out, and he would sit and I want you to listen to this music. Okay, he was behind the scenes before there was behind the scenes. So I was like, I want to introduce you to Don McLean. And I'm like, well, like, we're little. Like, who's Don McLean? Well, he was really big when I was growing up, but he was a poet. Okay, why would you call him a poet? Like, glad you asked. And he goes, the story, like this, and I used to hear it all the time, like, American Pie, I know that song. He goes, but you know where it comes from? What do you mean where it comes from? Do you know what it's about? I don't know. He's like, well, let me tell you the story. This is about the crap when Buddy Holly died. Who's Buddy Holly? Tell us about that. Richie Venezuela, like Richie Valens. Okay, Big Bopper. Who's the Big Bopper? Tell us about the Big Bopper and how important they were and how, like, the whole world changed when their plane went down. Oh, and then we listen, and he'd walk us through each verse and tell us what he was trying. Oh, wow! Like, we got a whole history lesson in American
well,
music history.
storytelling.
Yeah, but he would explain to us where the story came from. Okay, so we're like, okay, then the next lesson, we'd be sleeping over, spending time at each other's houses. He goes, I want to teach another one. I'm like, okay, so we're at this point, we're like, tell us a story, Uncle Paul. Like, pick out an album and let's have like a bedtime story. And he goes, you remember Vincent Van Gogh? I'm like, yeah, I love Vincent. I love his paintings. Well, let me tell you the story of Vincent. I didn't know until my Uncle Paul told us about his ear and how ashamed he was, so he never was allowed pictures. But he talked about his girlfriend and that he had schizophrenia and they didn't know it and that he loved her. This whole story. And I'm like, and he goes, better than I tell you, let Don McLean tell you. And Starry started, and I'm like, oh, like, that's about the painting. He's like, yes. And about the life of, that was the first time I realized the power of songwriting. Okay. And they mean, like, he would tell us the stories of, he was before the Beatles, but all of, like, the Shirelles and all the music of that time. So it's like, that's when I got into, like, songs can help connect emotions. And, like, when you're a kid and you have no one to talk to, or, like, people don't get it, where do you go? You go to songs.
Yeah.
Songs can express what you don't know how to say or what you're not allowed to say.
Well, this is the power of these songwriters that stick through generations, because they have an ability to speak the universal truth.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is there are some that will take a specific moment in their own life, a specific person, a specific time for them, and relate it through their stories. But some of the best songwriters leave it open to interpretation. So they might name people in there that never existed, but it's left up to the listener to go, who might this be? And certain myths around it, certain stories come out of it. So you mentioned the Beatles. They've mentioned many a person in their song. It's like, are they real? Where did they come from? Who picked it up? Where are they from?
Well,
But
even like yeah. Well, even like Eleanor, I love what my uncle my mother's brother used to play on the guitar, Eleanor Rigby.
That's exactly the
And
example in my head.
Yeah, and I love that. I don't know who Eleanor is. I don't know what happened, but I love that song. I just like that song just spoke to me.
Yeah.
And for I always say I come from a very loving family, but very dysfunctional. Feelings. Everyone loved each other, but feelings were not allowed, especially the darker ones or the sad ones, because they couldn't handle it. And I remember going through a transition where, for a lot of reasons, I gave up dancing when I was 12. I did it. I look back now and I understand. My dream was to become a Balanchine ballerina. Puberty ended that because I was the first girl with boobs and curves, and Balanchine was like, I did not fit the model. So rather than talk to my teacher who loved me and like worked with me since the time I was 3, I just said, oh, I don't want to dance anymore. Like, and they're like, what? But I'm like, and everyone said, okay, like whatever. But that was not what I really wanted. But I didn't talk about it because you don't talk about it. But I remember Fleetwood Mac in my teenage years was one of my favorite bands. I just loved everything about them. But Stevie Nicks, she's still today my muse. When I think of myself, like and I always said she had leg warmers like me. I was a dancer, so I was always in leg warmers. I just loved her outfits, and I was just like, she was my muse. But when she created Landslide, that one song has carried me throughout my life. That time was about, and I didn't know, like you're talking about, they leave it open to interpretation. I didn't find out until later it was about her writing about her. She was ready to give up. She was ready to give up pursuing music as a living. When she wrote that music, she was like, I'm ready to, and Dad said, if you want to come home, Stevie, you can come home, like, do what you want. And then it was right before she got picked up, her and Lindsay, by Fleetwood Mac. But that song, what I could not articulate, she spoke my heart. She spoke it. And then I did that my relationship with like growing up and leaving, and like, not that I want, but it's just like I had to leave and grow up and move out. But my relationship with my parents, especially my dad, it was so funny. Years later, when she sang it live, she said, Daddy, this is for you. That was the song my dad and I danced to at my wedding to my husband, because like so much of my life was about my parents and him, so it's just, music gave me a voice when I didn't have it. Like if I couldn't talk about my feelings, either because they wouldn't have been handled well, or I just didn't feel I could talk about them because it was my own thing. Music gave me a voice. So I would find music to fit my mood or express. And it was also, like we were talking about, like I do with my clients, self-talk. They were like, music was my coach. Music was my coach. Like Whitney Houston.
That's a really nice way to put it.
Whitney Houston, greatest love of all. I'm like, oh, I gotta love myself. Okay, like this is like, yeah, thank you. Or you listen to songs. Okay, yep, like they were my friends. They were like clues, like like
yeah,
right. Like, what do I need to know? I know Moses got the burning bush and Noah got the ark. Like, who's going to talk to me? Music, albums. I'd always find, right, you go buy the album for the hit, like the single they dropped.
Yeah.
Right. But there's also, it was like, I think there's a song in here for me. And then you like, oh, that one's speaking to me. Like, okay, God's speaking to me. Okay, I got the message.
And it has a habit of appearing from wherever, when it feels like you need it the most.
Yes. Yes.
Whatever sign it is, whatever way it gets to you, it somehow finds its way to you.
Always did.
And
Always.
it's
Even like,
it's got that
yeah.
like really remarkable way of constantly doing that. It
Yeah.
could be a new song, it could be an old song, it could be like something
It
you've
could
not
be,
heard of.
it
Yeah,
could,
anything.
yeah. And it always, and why I say I was always like the oddball, because like people like now it's a cult classic, but back when it came out, the movie Xanadu was like total critic bomb. I loved everything about that. I loved everything about that movie. No one could tell me that wasn't a great movie. Olivia Newton-John was like another muse, like person that I loved as a musician. But Michael Beck had just come off the movie The Warriors. If you remember that, it was a little movie, but like Harlem, a New York borough, like gang, little off gang having to like survive all the boroughs trying to get home because someone said that little gang took out the big gang leader of all the gangs in New York, and they were set up. It was a little itty bitty movie. Now people 30 years later, they just did a meet and greet, and like people remember them from 30 years ago. But Michael was like the it kid. But it had Greek mythology, it had music, it had Gene Kelly, right? I'm the one who grew up with the 40s guy was in the new 80s movie, and he was cool, and Singing in the Rain was cool. um ELO, like all my favorite music, ELO, the band, not only the music and the storyline, but the messages for me in the music. It was like just hit me, and just everything about it. It was like my like, oh wow, God's talking to me. Like I'm getting so many, lessons from this movie that everyone's panning, and I'm like, it's not about that. It's about this. Um, so like that was a huge piece of it. Never mind, I love the music, but then the stories in the music, and then the movie line of it, and then around that time, Kansas, Carry On Wayward Son, Dust in the Wind, like those. Though I learned those songs when I was going through a lot of emotional
Yeah.
turmoil, loss, death of people that were very close to me. Love the lyrics, but also love the music. Like I could just crunch down and just geek out. Not that I was ever like really, I'm not saying I could go to school for music theory, but I could appreciate it. Like I would
Yeah.
just get into like, oh my God, what made him choose that chord? Or like, oh my God, that's so cool. Like the emotions of it, right? The frequency. I was always very sensitive to frequency. And I'd be like, oh, so that's like, so different. I would put on like different mixtapes for different things.
Going down many a rabbit hole, I should imagine.
Yeah. But again, like you too, right? What did we had TV, right? And you can only watch so much MTV, right? At the time. That generation where, I'm in the Gen X generation, go out and play. Don't come home until it's dark. Stay where I could see you, or stay where one of the aunts could see you. Be around, but go outside.
Yeah.
So right, or we'd go to each other's house and be in each other's bedrooms or the basement with the turntable, and we'd sit there, do homework, playing the albums. You know what I mean? Whatever, just sitting outside or whatever with the albums. Back, I think Walkmans had just come on the scene. So it was always like music.
A simpler, fun time. Kim, we've reached the hour. I always say on this show of like, this could go on for ages, and this is what the quality of a great conversation does. So, personally, thank you for coming on the show. It's been so much fun, and we could probably have you back on for another episode and continue. Before we go, would you like to just signpost people to wherever you'd like, where they can reach you for the conversation, etc.?
Sure. And same, please, because I'm going to be promoting it to my community, so I want them to hear how they can connect with you as well. If you want to connect with me personally, Kimberly Kasparian, Kasparian on Facebook. You'll see me with my little.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. So that's. I'm sure there's other Kimberly Kasparians, but only one only like this. And then if you are in business and this strikes a chord in you, we have a Facebook group where you can come network and have these conversations and have business conversations too. You can just Google it, business owners who want to scale. Business owners who want to scale. We have relationship conversations, we have business conversations, we all connect. And this is how what was so great about our connecting, right? You and I just started talking about one little topic and it opened up to a bigger conversation. And here we are speaking for an hour about music, right? But it's relationship.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. And now, like, because I'm talking to you, my community is going to want to talk with you. And we haven't even talked about what we do for a living besides sit, enjoying music.
That's it.
So thank you. Because this is like what I teach in my world. Like, everyone just gets to know each other. It's the old Armenian way. Let's sit, have coffee. We'll figure it out. Whatever you need, we'll get done. Like, just sit down and like put on some music and have some. Like, what can I give you with the coffee? That's it. That's it. It hasn't changed since I was a kid. Like, it's all right. We're gonna make it work.
And I always say often of like, the art of conversation seems to be, and funnily enough, even in the era of podcasts and ways of communicating and stuff, we can do more about conversing more with people. And this is, as I said at the beginning, that this is the show where you can just enjoy yourself about music, and we've had such a blast again on the show. So Kim, thank you again for coming on. I'm sure we'll have you back on again at some point.
Misha, do me a favor, just your already listeners know, but where can my community come join more of these conversations or listen into more of these conversations? Where should I send
sure
them?
So wherever you are watching or listening to the show, there'll be a link in the description or wherever to contact me, or a contact form to check out the show. So this is going to go out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. On social media, you'll find me at Inner Peace Walker, all one word. You can check out more of my content and what I'm about, and just reach out if you want to come on the show. As I said, Kimberly came on the show through just us being a mutual connection, exchanged a couple of DMs, and that was it. It's, as I said, you've seen the show as it is now. It's literally, there's no set agenda, there's no like qualification to come on the show. If you're a fan of music, you've got stories, let's have it, let's have the conversation. That's all that it is. As I said, if you want to be a guest, just reach out to me. We'll set the thing up, and we'll get your episode out there as well. So thanks very much for coming along and checking out this episode, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Soundtrack of Your Life. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do like and share this episode around. Subscribe to the channel for further shows coming up. Comment with your thoughts below and use the sign up link to get yourself on the shows on. I'd love to have you on. Feel supersonic.